The council thought the humans were bluffing, but when the final warning went unanswered, the sky over a dozen worlds burned. The breaking point captain Elena Vasquez stood at the observation deck of the UES Aurora, watching the stars drift past through the reinforced viewport. Her weathered hands gripped the metal railing as she reviewed the mission briefing one more time. The Aurora was humanity's newest colony ship, carrying 15,000 settlers to establish a new world in the Kepler system. It should have been a routine mission, but nothing involving humans was ever routine in the eyes of the Galactic Council. The communication panel beside her crackled to life. "Captain, we're receiving a distress signal from the Altair system," reported Lieutenant Commander James Park from the bridge. His voice carried an edge of concern that made Elena's stomach tighten. "It's coming from a species I've never encountered before." Elena made her way back to the bridge, her boots echoing against the metal flooring. The Aurora was not a warship, but it carried enough defensive capabilities to protect its precious cargo of colonists. The crew moved with practiced efficiency around their stations, monitoring the ship's systems as it traveled through hyperspace toward their destination. "Put the signal through," Elena ordered as she settled into her command chair. The main screen flickered and displayed a desperate alien face unlike anything in the standard xenobiology databases. The creature had pale blue skin, large golden eyes, and what appeared to be natural crystalline growths along its forehead. "Please, anyone who can hear this," the alien spoke in broken universal standard. "My people are dying. The council ships left us here to die. Our children have no food, no medicine. We were told we were being relocated to a safe world, but they abandoned us on this dead rock with nothing." Elena felt her jaw clench. She had heard stories about the council's relocation policies, but seeing the reality of it made her blood boil. These refugees had been dumped on a barren world with no resources and left to die slowly. "How many survivors?" she asked her communications officer. "Scanning now, Captain. I'm reading approximately 40,000 life signs on the planet's surface. The readings are weak, though. Many appear to be in critical condition." Elena stared at the alien's desperate face on the screen. She knew what she was supposed to do. Humans were forbidden from interfering in council affairs. Any species that received council relocation orders was off limits to human assistance. The penalties for violation were severe, potentially including the destruction of all human colonies. But Elena had not joined the colonial fleet to follow unjust laws. She had joined to protect innocent life, regardless of what species it belonged to. "Plot a course for the Altair system," she ordered. "Full speed." Her navigation officer, Ensign Sarah Chen, looked up from her console with wide eyes. "Captain, that's a direct violation of the non-interference treaty. If the council finds out we helped refugees from their relocation program, they could declare war on Earth." Elena stood and walked to the center of the bridge. Around her, the crew waited for her decision. These men and women had followed her through 3 successful colony missions, and she knew they trusted her judgment completely. "The council has been pushing humanity around for 40 years, Elena said quietly. "They dictate where we can settle, what technology we can develop, even how many children we can have. They treat us like dangerous animals that need to be caged, all while they commit genocide against species too weak to fight back." She activated the ship's internal communication system, and her voice echoed through every corridor and compartment of the Aurora. "Attention all hands and colonists. We have just received a distress call from 40,000 refugees who have been abandoned to die by the Galactic Council. I am altering our course to provide humanitarian assistance. I know this violates our orders and risks our mission, but I cannot stand by and watch innocent beings die when we have the power to help them." The response from the colonists was immediate. Messages flooded the communication system from families volunteering to share their supplies, doctors offering their services, and engineers ready to help build temporary shelters. These were people who had left Earth to build new lives among the stars, and they understood that freedom meant nothing if it was built on the suffering of others. 3 days later, the Aurora dropped out of hyperspace above a brown and lifeless world. The planet's surface was scarred with impact craters and showed no signs of vegetation or water. It was exactly the kind of world the Council used as a dumping ground for species they wanted to eliminate quietly. Elena watched the initial survey reports appear on her screen. The Kalari refugees, as they called themselves, had been surviving in makeshift camps near the planet's equator. Their technology was similar to early human industrial development, but their ships had been confiscated by the Council, leaving them trapped. "Captain," reported Dr. Martinez from the medical bay, "the refugees are suffering from severe malnutrition and exposure to radiation. Many of the children won't survive another week without immediate intervention." Elena nodded grimly. "Begin emergency evacuation procedures. I want every refugee off that planet within 12 hours. The colonists have voted to share the Aurora with them until we can find them a proper home." As human shuttles began ferrying Kalari families to safety, Elena received the message she had been dreading. A Council enforcement fleet had detected their activities and was en route to the system. 3 heavy cruisers and a dozen escort vessels, all carrying the authority of the galaxy's most powerful government. Elena activated her personal communication system and sent a priority message to Earth Command. "This is Captain Elena Vasquez of the UES Aurora. We are about to be engaged by Council forces while conducting humanitarian operations. I want Earth to know that we acted according to our principles, not our orders. Whatever happens here, do not let our deaths be in vain." The Council fleet arrived with the arrogant certainty of those who had never been challenged. Their lead ship, a massive dreadnought called the Dominion's Will, immediately began broadcasting surrender demands on all frequencies. "Human vessel, you are in violation of Galactic Council Resolution 2847. Cease your interference with lawful relocation procedures and prepare to be boarded. Your vessel and all personnel will be impounded pending trial for crimes against galactic peace." Elena looked around her bridge one final time. Her crew stood ready at their stations, and through the observation windows she could see the last shuttle loads of Kalari children being brought to safety aboard the Aurora. "Council vessel," Elena responded, her voice steady and clear. "These people are under the protection of the United Earth Federation. If you want them, you'll have to go through us first." The silence that followed was broken by the sound of weapon systems powering up throughout the Aurora. Elena had made her choice and there was no turning back. Humanity's long period of submission to Council. Authority was about to end in the most dramatic way possible. The war that would reshape the galaxy was about to begin with the simple decision of one human captain who refused to let innocent beings die while she had the power to save them. The reckoning begins. Admiral Marcus Chen received the emergency transmission from Captain Vasquez while he stood in the secure command bunker beneath the Himalayas. The message had traveled through 17 relay stations to reach Earth, each jump bringing news that would change the course of human history. As the recording ended, Marcus stared at the holographic display showing the Altair system, where one human colony ship was about to face an entire Council enforcement fleet. The war room erupted in controlled chaos. Officers rushed between communication stations, pulling up tactical displays and fleet positions throughout human space. General Patricia Webb, commander of Earth's Colonial Defense Force, moved to stand beside Marcus at the central planning table. "Sir, we have 43 ships within 6 days of the Altair system," Patricia reported, her fingers dancing across the holographic controls. "But they're all colony transports and civilian vessels. The nearest military fleet is Captain Torres with the 8th Squadron at Wolf 359, but they won't arrive in time." Marcus studied the tactical display, his mind calculating possibilities and probabilities. For 40 years, humanity had built their space presence around avoiding confrontation with the Council. Their ships were designed for exploration and colonization, not warfare. At least that was what the Council believed. "Patricia, initiate Protocol 7, Marcus said quietly. Around the room, conversation stopped as officers turned to stare at him. Protocol 7 had been theoretical for decades, a contingency plan that everyone hoped would never be necessary. "Sir, are you certain?" Patricia asked. "Once we activate those systems, there's no hiding what we've really been building out there." Marcus nodded grimly. "Captain Vasquez just declared war on the most powerful government in the galaxy. The least we can do is make sure she has backup." He activated the command console and began entering authorization codes that had been locked away since the day they were created. Across human space, ships that had appeared to be peaceful colony vessels began revealing their true nature. The UES Manhattan, supposedly carrying mining equipment to the Tau Ceti system, opened concealed weapon bays and powered up military-grade shields. The transport ship New Horizon near Proxima Centauri, deployed sensor arrays that could track enemy vessels across multiple star systems. Dozens of seemingly civilian ships throughout the galaxy activated hidden systems that transformed them from helpless targets into formidable warships. Captain Rosa Torres stood on the bridge of the UES Defiance and watched her tactical display light up with new contacts. Her ship had been masquerading as a deep space research vessel for 5 years, but the hull concealed enough firepower to destroy a small fleet. Around her, the other ships of the 8th Squadron were likewise revealing their hidden capabilities. "All ships report ready for combat operations," her weapons officer announced. "The Council vessels at Kepler 438 are requesting our identification and intentions." Rosa smiled grimly. The Council had been tracking her squadron for months, believing they were conducting harmless scientific research. They were about to discover that human science had progressed far beyond what anyone suspected. "Signal the Council ships," Rosa ordered. "Tell them we're responding to a humanitarian crisis in the Altair system. If they attempt to interfere, they will be considered hostile." The Council commander's response came back within minutes, filled with the arrogant certainty that had characterized alien-human relations for decades. "Human vessels, you are not authorized for military operations in this sector. Power down your weapons and prepare for inspection." Rosa looked around her bridge at the faces of her crew. These men and women had spent years pretending to be peaceful researchers while secretly preparing for this exact moment. They had trained in hidden facilities, developed weapons in underground laboratories, and built ships disguised as civilian vessels. All of it leading to this moment when humanity would finally show the galaxy who they really were. "All ships, this is Captain Torres," she broadcast to her squadron. "Humanity has been underestimated for the last time. Show them what Earth's children are capable of." The battle at Kepler 438 lasted exactly 14 minutes. The Council forces, expecting to intimidate a handful of human research ships, instead faced a coordinated assault from vessels, equipped with weapons technology they had never seen before. Human railguns fired projectiles at speeds that overwhelmed alien point defense systems. Plasma torpedoes phased through energy shields as if they did not exist. And when Council ships tried to retreat, they discovered that human vessels could match their best speeds while maintaining perfect formation. News of the victory spread through the galactic communication networks faster than any government could suppress it. For the first time in recorded history, human military forces had defeated a Council fleet in open combat. Species throughout the galaxy who had spent centuries under Council oppression began to whisper questions they had never dared ask before. Dr. Sarah Kim stood in her laboratory aboard the research station, Galileo, watching the quantum manipulation fields that surrounded her latest creation. The device looked innocent enough, a crystalline structure about the size of a human head, but it represented technology that would revolutionize space warfare. For 15 years, she had been developing gravity weapons in secret, funded by black-budget programs that officially did not exist. "The field generators are stable," reported her assistant, Dr. Michael Zhang. "We can create localized gravity distortions up to 10,000 times standard planetary gravity. Any ship caught in the field will be compressed to the size of a marble." Sarah nodded and activated her communication link to Admiral Chen on Earth. "Sir, the gravity lance is ready for deployment. Installation teams are standing by to mount the systems on combat vessels." Meanwhile, in the depths of space near the galactic rim, Commander Lisa Park was making discoveries that would change everything. Her stealth reconnaissance ship had been monitoring Council communications for months, intercepting their encrypted messages and mapping their command structure. What she found was evidence of crimes that spanned centuries. "Command, this is Ghost Rider," Lisa transmitted on an encrypted channel back to Earth. "I've accessed the Council's historical archives. You need to see what I found." The data she transmitted painted a picture of systematic oppression that went far beyond what anyone had imagined. The Council had not simply been restricting human expansion. They had been eliminating any species that showed potential to challenge their authority. Entire civilizations had been wiped out or reduced to slavery. Planets had been stripped of resources and their populations relocated to die on barren worlds. "Admiral," Lisa continued her report, "the Kalari refugees that Captain Vasquez rescued are not an isolated case. There are dozens of species being held in concentration camps throughout the galaxy. The Council calls it the Final Solution Protocol. They plan to reduce every non-Council species to manageable populations under direct government control. Admiral Chen studied the evidence and felt his resolve harden into something unbreakable. This was not just about human rights anymore. This was about stopping a genocide that had been happening in secret for generations. All ships, all stations, all personnel, Marcus broadcast to every human facility in the galaxy. We are no longer fighting for the right to expand or to be left alone. We are fighting to liberate every species in this galaxy from a government that has committed crimes against all sentient life. Operation Liberation begins now. The response was immediate and overwhelming. Human ships throughout the galaxy began converging on Council positions. Not just military vessels, but civilian transports loaded with volunteers, research ships carrying experimental weapons, even merchant vessels armed with improvised weapon systems. Humanity was going to war not as a military operation, but as a species-wide uprising. On the planet Zarion Prime, a Council prison world where dozens of alien species were held in forced labor camps, the guards received their first indication that something had changed when human ships began dropping out of hyperspace in orbit. The prison commandant, a reptilian creature named Vex Zalon, activated his communication systems and began broadcasting the usual threats and demands for identification. The response he received came from Captain Jennifer Walsh of the Liberation vessel, Freedom's Call. Commandant Zalon, you are harboring political prisoners in violation of galactic law. Surrender immediately and release all detainees, or we will take them by force. Zalon laughed, a sound like grinding metal. Humans have no authority here. This facility is under Council protection. Leave immediately or face the consequences. Captain Walsh looked at her tactical officer and nodded. The Freedom's Call was a converted cargo hauler, not a warship, but her crew had spent months modifying it for exactly this kind of mission. Fire. The prison's shields lasted approximately 30 seconds against human weapons. When the shooting stopped, every guard tower had been reduced to rubble and every cell door in the facility had been blown open. Thousands of alien prisoners emerged into sunlight for the first time in years, looking up at the human ships in orbit with expressions of wonder and gratitude. Similar scenes were playing out across the galaxy as human forces struck at Council positions with coordinated precision. But the real shock came when other species began joining the uprising. The Kalari, saved by Captain Vasquez, used their knowledge of Council security systems to help human forces locate hidden prison facilities. The Thanari, whose homeworld had been strip-mined by the Council decades earlier, provided intelligence about Council fleet movements. Admiral Chen watched the tactical displays in his command center and realized that what had started as a desperate attempt to save one human captain had become a galactic revolution. Species that had been oppressed for centuries were rising up, and they were looking to humanity for leadership in their fight for freedom. The galaxy was about to discover that the species they had dismissed as primitive and dangerous was actually their salvation. The new dawn, the Saint-Yaon, Siege of Nexus Prime began at dawn on the third moon of Andromeda 7. Admiral Marcus. Chen stood on the bridge of the UES Liberator, humanity's first true dreadnought, and watched as the largest fleet in galactic history prepared for the final assault on the Council's stronghold. Around him stretched a formation of ships representing 43 different species, all united under the banner of the Galactic Liberation Alliance. The Nexus Prime system was the administrative heart of Council power, protected by defensive installations that had been built over thousands of years. Energy barriers surrounded each planet like glowing shells, and automated weapon platforms filled the space between worlds with overlapping fields of fire. It was designed to be impregnable, a fortress that could withstand any conceivable attack. But the Council had never faced anything like the force that now approached their capital. Human ships flew alongside Kalari cruisers, their hulls gleaming with adaptive armor that shifted color as they moved. Thanari fighters darted between massive Xylorian battleships, their crews coordinating attacks through translation software that had been developed in secret human laboratories. The Vorthak, silicon-based creatures who communicated through electromagnetic pulses, had contributed their knowledge of quantum mechanics to create shields that could deflect any known weapon. Captain Elena Vasquez, the woman whose decision to save Kalari refugees had started this war, commanded a squadron of liberation vessels tasked with rescuing prisoners from the Council's detention facilities. Her ship, the Aurora, had been refitted with the most advanced rescue equipment human engineers could devise. medical bays capable of treating dozens of alien physiologies, portable habitats that could sustain any known atmospheric requirements, and communication arrays that could translate languages from species the Council had tried to erase from history. "Admiral," reported Commander David Kim from the Fleet Intelligence Center, "our reconnaissance drones have mapped the prison complexes throughout the system. We're reading life signs from approximately 2 million detained beings across 17 different facilities." Marcus nodded grimly. The scale of the Council's crimes had become clear over the past months as human forces liberated world after world. Entire civilizations had been reduced to slave populations, their cultures systematically destroyed, and their people scattered across prison planets throughout the galaxy. The Nexus Prime system contained the largest concentration of political prisoners in known space. Dr. Alexandra Torres, report from the Weapons Development Team, Marcus requested through his communication system. The brilliant physicist had spent the last 6 months perfecting humanity's most devastating military technology, devices that pushed the boundaries of what was considered possible. "Sir, the reality displacement cannons are fully operational." Alexandra's voice crackled through the speakers. "We can create localized space-time distortions that will phase enemy installations out of normal space. The targets will simply cease to exist in this dimension without any explosive effects that might harm nearby prisoners." Marcus studied the tactical displays one final time. The Council's defensive network was formidable, but human scientists had spent years analyzing its weaknesses. Every energy barrier had resonance frequencies that could be disrupted. Every weapon platform had blind spots that could be exploited. Every shield generator had power sources that could be overloaded. "All ships," Marcus broadcast to the assembled fleet, "this is the moment that will determine the future of our galaxy. For too long, sentient beings have lived in fear of arbitrary authority. Today, we end that fear forever. Operation Final Dawn is now in effect." The attack began with a coordinated assault by human stealth vessels that had been infiltrating the system for weeks. Ships no larger than shuttles, equipped with experimental cloaking technology, appeared inside the Council's defensive perimeter and began disabling key installations. Power relays that fed the energy barriers simply vanished as reality displacement weapons erased them from existence. Communication hubs that coordinated the system's defenses found their quantum processors scrambled by electromagnetic pulses that operated on frequencies unknown to Council science. Admiral Thexus Vrakon, the reptilian commander of the Nexus Prime Defense Fleet, watched his tactical displays with growing horror as his supposedly impregnable fortress began collapsing around him. Human ships were appearing and disappearing like ghosts, striking at targets that should have been impossible to reach. His own vessels, the most advanced warships in Council space, found themselves outmaneuvered by enemy craft that seemed to ignore the basic laws of physics. "How are they doing this?" Vrakon demanded of his science officer. "Our sensors show human vessels moving at velocities that should tear their hulls apart. Their weapons are penetrating shields that have never been breached in 3,000 years of warfare." The truth was that humanity had revolutionized space combat by approaching it from principles that Council scientists had never considered. While alien civilizations had focused on building bigger weapons and stronger shields, human engineers had worked to manipulate the fundamental forces of reality itself. Gravity drives that could accelerate ships without creating inertial stress. Quantum tunneling devices that allowed weapons to bypass physical barriers entirely. Temporal displacement fields that could slow down enemy projectiles while accelerating friendly ones. Captain Rosa Torres led the assault on the Council's primary command facility, a space station the size of a small moon that coordinated military operations across the galaxy. Her ship, the Retribution, had been equipped with the prototype matter conversion system that could transform any material into pure energy. As her vessel approached the command station, she activated the device and watched enemy defensive platforms simply dissolve into harmless radiation. "Captain," reported her tactical officer, "we're receiving surrender signals from multiple Council vessels. They're requesting terms and asking for guarantee of safe treatment for their crews." Rosa nodded and opened communication channels to the surrendering ships. "Council vessels, this is Captain Torres of the Liberation Alliance. Your crews will be treated according to the laws of war. However, any officers responsible for crimes against sentient beings will face trial for their actions. Begin powering down your weapons and prepare for inspection." The battle for Nexus Prime lasted 8 hours from start to finish. When the shooting stopped, every major council installation in the system had been captured or destroyed. The defensive network that had protected the galactic government for millennia lay in ruins, and the prison facilities that had held millions of innocent beings were being opened by liberation forces. Elena Vasquez led the first rescue teams into the detention complex on Nexus Prime's fourth moon. What she found there would haunt her for the rest of her life. Beings from dozens of species, many so weakened by years of captivity that they could barely stand, looked up at their rescuers with expressions of disbelief and desperate hope. Children who had never seen sunlight, elderly beings who had been separated from their families for decades, scientists and artists and philosophers whose only crime had been belonging to species the Council considered inconvenient. Medical teams to all levels. Elena broadcast through her communication system. We have beings here who have been imprisoned for their entire lives. Some of them may not even remember what freedom looks like. Dr. Patricia Singh, humanity's leading expert on alien psychology, worked alongside Kalari healers and Thanari social workers to help the freed prisoners adjust to their liberation. Many of them had developed forms of trauma that had never been documented before. Psychological damage caused by decades of systematic dehumanization and cultural destruction. Captain, Patricia reported to Elena after examining hundreds of former prisoners. Some of these beings have been held for so long that they've forgotten their original languages. Entire generations have grown up knowing nothing but council control. Rehabilitation is going to take years, possibly decades. Meanwhile, in the council's primary government complex, Admiral Marcus Chen stood before the assembled remains of the galactic leadership. The surviving council members, mostly elderly beings from the founding species, sat in their ceremonial chambers with expressions of defeat and bewilderment. Their authority, which had seemed absolute for thousands of years, had been shattered in a matter of months by a species they had dismissed as primitive. Members of the former Galactic Council, Marcus began, his voice echoing in the vast chamber. You stand accused of crimes against sentient life on a scale unprecedented in galactic history, systematic genocide, forced imprisonment, cultural destruction, and the suppression of technological and social development across hundreds of civilizations. High Counselor Draeth, the ancient leader of the founding Archon species, raised one of his forearms in a gesture of formal response. Admiral Chen, your species has destroyed a government that maintained peace and order for over 5,000 years. What do you propose to put in its place? Without central authority, the galaxy will descend into chaos and warfare. Marcus activated a holographic display that showed images from across the galaxy. Species that had been oppressed for centuries were now working together to rebuild their civilizations. Former prison worlds were being transformed into colonies where different species could share knowledge and resources. Scientific research that had been banned by the Council was producing technological advances that benefited everyone. Counselor Draeth, Marcus replied, we are not replacing your authority with our own. We are creating something that has never existed in this galaxy before. True democracy where every species has a voice and no single government can impose its will on others. The document that established the Galactic Democratic Federation was signed by representatives of 67 different species in a ceremony broadcast across the galaxy. Unlike the old council system, where a few powerful civilizations made decisions for everyone else, the new government gave every species representation proportional to their population and commitment to democratic principles. Dr. Sarah Kim, now serving as the Federation's first Director of Scientific Cooperation, stood before the assembled delegates and outlined the research programs that would define the new galactic civilization, technology sharing agreements that would help less developed species advance rapidly, medical cooperation that would eliminate diseases that had plagued entire worlds, environmental restoration projects that would repair the damage caused by centuries of council exploitation. The age of artificial scarcity is over, Sarah announced to applause from delegates representing beings who had never dreamed of such opportunities. Knowledge belongs to all sentient life, and every species will have the chance to reach their full potential. 1 year after the liberation of Nexus Prime, Elena Vasquez stood on the observation deck of the Federation's new capital station. Built in the neutral space between galaxy's major spiral arms, through the reinforced viewport, She could see ships from dozens of species arriving for the first General Assembly of the Galactic Democratic Federation. Kalari research vessels worked alongside human exploration ships. Thanari cultural exchange programs brought art and music from worlds that had been silent for generations. The Vorthak had established the galaxy's first truly universal communication network, allowing any species to talk with any other regardless of their method of communication. The transformation had not been easy. There were species who preferred isolation to cooperation, worlds that chose to remain independent rather than join the Federation. Some regions of the galaxy were still dealing with the aftermath of Council rule, and it would take generations to undo all the damage that had been done. But for the first time in galactic history, freedom was not a privilege granted by authority. It was a right claimed by anyone brave enough to fight for it, and at the center of this new civilization stood humanity, not as conquerors or rulers, but as the species that had taught the galaxy what it truly meant to be free. The Council had ignored Earth's final warning, and in doing so, they had awakened something that would change the universe forever. The predators from the death world called Earth had not just won a war. They had liberated an entire galaxy and shown every species in it that no authority, no matter how ancient or powerful, could stand against beings who refused to accept oppression. The age of the Galactic Council was over. The age of freedom had begun.